Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people get exactly what they ask for, and all the stories are so freaking satisfying. And guys, in this episode, a Karen threatens to sue and immediately regrets it. I hope you enjoyed today's fantastic lineup of stories. Hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, your stories can be sent right here. So a little background. I used to work retail in a DVD/CD store that rhymes with manatee. I'm from Australia. We had computers that we could use to find certain titles and artists in the store if we had it in stock. Or we could even order from any of the other 300 stores in the country and have it shipped to the store. Many people would use this for older CDs or collector items that were harder to get. One day, an older man comes in asking about a certain 80s rock band that I can't remember. I looked on the computer for him and was able to track down their album names, which of those albums he wanted, located the album in stores around the country, and got his details so we could contact him. He thanked me and said he was so happy that we could get these albums in for him, and then he leaves the store. So the next day, I get called into the boss's office because of a customer complaint. It was and is my only ever complaint in any job for the past 9 years of working. The guy had called in and complained that while my service was lovely, I didn't make enough eye contact when I was using the computer. So cue the malicious compliance. 3 days later, he comes in because he had another band he wanted to order. Luckily, I was working. So as soon as he walks in, I greet him with the biggest smile and looked him straight in the eyes. When he asked if we had any of his band in stock, I typed into the computer while maintaining direct eye contact. It took me about 4 tries to find the right keyboard letters as I wasn't great at touch typing. He was starting to get annoyed, but he didn't voice it. Then I had to search what store location these albums were at. That took another couple of attempts to type. I then turned the computer screen around to the point it looked like it was gonna snap off. I had to move the displays from the counter, which took more time. But finally, I was able to set it up at such an angle that I could read it with a quick glance, but also maintaining eye contact. At this point, he starts to squirm and look away, but I was only beginning. Next was his details and taking his deposit. It took me a solid 6 attempts to enter his details into the system, as you had to select each box to type in, and that was hard considering I wasn't looking. At this point, he had gone rather quiet and he was looking at his shoes. When he handed me his money, I still maintained direct eye contact and even dropped it accidentally out of my hand, which then led to me awkwardly slapping around on the counter until my hand found it. Wouldn't want to break that eye contact looking for a few coins, right? After all the typing attempts, it took me an extra 10 minutes to serve him all because I couldn't look at what I was doing. To this day, I've seen him a couple of times, but he won't come to my register, and he doesn't make eye contact, or he hides in the aisles until I'm busy with another customer. A shame, he really had such lovely brown eyes. Guys, I've read at this point probably hundreds of stories on this channel, and I've heard all of the ridiculous things people complain about, but honestly, I think this one takes the cake. Like, getting written up for not enough eye contact is ridiculous. Like, I'm so glad I never worked in retail, guys. I've avoided it my whole life, but if you do, let me know if you've ever experienced something this absurd before. So this happened 10 years ago when I worked at the box office of a movie theater, before automated machines were the norm. Adult tickets, 14 plus, were $11.99. Kids 3 to 13 were $9.50, and kids under 3 were free. So on this day, I had a woman come to my till with 2 kids. Now these kids look to be around 15 years old, though it can be hard to tell sometimes. Now as many kids don't carry any kind of ID, the rule of thumb was to sell either a kid's ticket or an adult ticket, based on how old the adult told us the kids were. Many people would of course lie about this and say their kids were 13 in order to save a few bucks. Typically, I didn't care to argue most of the time. Older kids getting cheaper tickets wasn't a big deal. What was a big deal this time was that the woman was very rude throughout the whole transaction. Now, we have a series of questions we have to ask throughout the whole transaction, loyalty program, etc., etc., and we would randomly get scored by mystery shoppers to ensure we were following the script. The woman was annoyed and short with me throughout the whole transaction when I was being super friendly and just trying to do my job. When we got to the part about what kind of ticket she needed, it goes something like this. So I ask her, how old are the kids? The woman then says, why? I say to her, so I know whether they need kids tickets or adult tickets. She then asked, what's the difference? I say to her, well, adult tickets are for 14 plus and they're $11.99. Kids tickets are for 3 to 13 and they're $9.50. Immediately the woman says, "Oh, they're 13. I then ask, "Okay, so which film would you like to go see today?" She then tells me whatever film it was, I can't remember anymore. And I say, "Okay, no problem. For 2 kids and 1 adult, that'll be $30.99 total." She then says, "Actually, I'm not going with them, I'm just dropping them off." I tell her, unfortunately, this movie is 14A, which means you have to be 14 or be accompanied by an adult to see it. Now, of course, the woman backtracks and she says, "Well, they're 14. I say, "You just told me they're 13. To which the Karen then says, "How do you know how old my kids are? If I say they're 14, they're 14. They are 14. I just didn't want to pay the price for adult tickets." I say to her, "Unfortunately, you told me they're 13, so unless you have ID that shows that they're 14, I have to assume that what you first told me was correct, and I can't allow them to watch the movie unsupervised as it's 14A. The woman then screams that this is ridiculous. What are my options? I say to her, "Well, they can either go to a different movie that's not 14A, or you're gonna have to buy a ticket and accompany them to this one." So after a lot of back and forth about options, she finally decided to bite the bullet and buy an adult ticket to accompany them. I like to think she spent the next 2 hours reflecting on how her attempt to save $5 ended up costing her $11.99 and 2 hours of her time. Either way, it still cost her the extra $11.99 for her ticket. Yeah, I can see this definitely happening at movie theaters all the time. That and buffets, guys. But the one thing about buffets is you need to tell your kids to lie if you're trying this. Like, I've seen it backfire a few times at buffets, and it's terrible when it happens. Where the parents try to say, "Oh, my kid is 8, he gets to eat half off." And then the kid pipes up and says, "Dad, I'm 11, what are you talking about, you silly man?" So yeah, if you're gonna try this, make sure to let your kids know the plan. So as a former school board privacy officer, I've dealt with many freedom of information requests from the public that dealt with everything from salaries of senior employees to value of contracts awarded to emails about routine businesses. Now, occasionally, someone would submit a very complex request that would require a lot of time to complete. So it was this one parent who wanted thousands of emails, committee meeting minutes, reports, and the personal notes of a dozen different school board employees. And the reason was, she had requested that her children's bus stop be moved from the entrance of the cul-de-sac she lived on to right in front of her house. Yep, she's that kind of woman. Now, while the difference was only 100 meters, which is about 109 yards, that request was denied because the circle at the end of the cul-de-sac was too small for the bus to turn around. So after working on the request for more than a month, she grows impatient and demanded to know what was taking so long. I tried to explain that I was a one-man operation, but she starts making accusations that I was part of a conspiracy against her. She demanded that I produce all the records immediately, or quote, "I will contact my lawyer to sue you." Now, I'm smart enough to know that anyone who says I'll contact my lawyer doesn't have one, especially not one who specializes in freedom of information requests. But I decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. So playing along, I said, "Oh, we don't want to come to that, I'll finish this today," and then hang up. So I did. The legislation requires that we charge $7.50 for every 15 minutes of search time for records, plus $7.50 for each 15 minutes of preparation time. That includes redacting personal information, eliminating non-responsive information, etc., plus other incidental costs, such as copying, printing, etc. So because I had to have ICT help with the emails and computer records, the charges added up rapidly. So I called her back the next day and told her the first batch of records would be ready by the end of the week. Then I asked how she would like to pay the cost. I then hear her voice get a little shaky over the phone as she asked, "The cost? What cost? How much?" I then tell her $4,870. As I'm sure your lawyer will explain, 50% is payable up front before we proceed any further with this request. Then we can start on the next batch. Now with that, there was dead quiet on the other end of the phone. She then says, "You haven't heard the end of this. I'm calling the local news," she shouted, and then she hung up. It's now 3 years later, and I'm still waiting. Guys, I love how people think that bringing in lawyers as a scare tactic will work, and I absolutely love when they're called out on their little shenanigans. It's just so satisfying. About 16 years ago, I was working as a greeter at Olive Garden. It was a second job just to make ends meet. So the day before Mother's Day, I was about 10 minutes late punching into work. I was coming from my primary job. I then changed clothes when I got there and punched in. So the manager immediately pulls me aside and said that I needed to be more courteous to my coworkers and show up on time, as my being late affects other people. I responded that I was aware, and I did call in to let them know that I would be late. And the person who answered was the person I was taking over for, and she said to take my time, because she was just gonna go home and spend the night in alone. No big deal. And that's when the manager laid into me. She told me that I'm not the type of person that can hack having 2 jobs, that I was too inconsiderate to work 2 jobs, and that maybe I should choose which job I value more and quit the other one, and that if I quit Olive Garden, I would not be welcome back. Now, initially I thought, well, I'm not gonna let you chase me away. But I realized that this is my second job, and I don't have to be here. I don't have to let her talk to me that way. So I went home and told my significant other what was said. We mutually decided that I should just quit Olive Garden. So I went in for my morning Mother's Day shift wearing my street clothes. I then went to the back office to find the manager, and I said, "So I put a lot of thought into what you said and have decided that you were right, and working here for you is not for me anymore." She looked stunned and said, "Well, you're gonna work today, right? You know Mother's Day is the busiest day of the year, and you can't just up and quit today of all days." I then say to her, "Well, maybe this will be a lesson for you on how to speak to your employees and how to be a decent human being. Besides, you said it yourself that I'm too inconsiderate to work here." And then I walked out. I haven't set foot in another Olive Garden since. Oh, guys, I wish I could have been there to see the look on the boss's face at that point. You're working Mother's Day, right? No, not for you. Guys, employers who don't value their employees don't deserve to keep them. And I'm really glad that OP got to say what they felt about the manager. And I'd like to think that was a turning point for her, and she started treating employees better, but probably not, right? Probably not. Okay, so back in the 1980s, I worked for a sporting goods company as a catalog designer. It was a small company, privately owned. I was the entire advertising department. I created 4 catalogs a year, and these were responsible for most of our mail order sales, to the tune of around $700,000 a year. We sent the catalogs via bulk mail using a mailing service. This let us send them for a much discounted rate. To do this required the use of a bulk mail permit, and placing the permit information on the mailing area of the catalog. Technically, it's called a fiche. So enter the new boss, who we'll call Ron. I was number 1, the only one in my department, and for some reason, the company owner hired Ron as a favor to a friend. From day 1, he was micromanaging, questioning everything, and screwing up my very tight schedule. This was before computers were common. Everything was done by hand, literally typing out copy and reducing it on a photocopier to fit. I developed the photo film myself, made prints, etc. This was all time-consuming and expensive, and deadlines could not be missed. So I was stuck with several 16-hour days come crunch time. I was complaining to the owner, but he really couldn't care less. I decided I really wanted to stick it to Ron, and the opportunity presented itself. The constant threats of my way or you're fired were getting to me. The latest pre-summer catalog was done. Summer was our biggest season, and I had to give him my mock-up of the final catalog for his approval. A new step added after he demanded it. So he looked at it and sent it back with several pointless revisions, and a note to remove that ugly permit box because it wasn't needed. Where he worked, he previously stuffed their mailers in envelopes. The envelopes had a fiche, but their mailer did this last step. Now I was hesitant, so I simply asked him to initial the changes, as this was the final approved version, and it was going to the printer the next day. There was no time to check it again. So he did. Now I knew it would be a total mess, and it's something I would never ever have done in the past. 50,000 catalogs were printed and shipped directly to the mailer. The day they arrive at the mailer, the boss gets a call from the sales rep saying, "Hey, we can't mail your catalogs." So the boss storms into my area of the building, and he's literally screaming. Ron is now pissed and yelling at me, joined by the boss. I swear, spittle and froth, vein bulging screaming. They were screaming that this is a minimum 2-week delay, wasted money, lost sales, etc, etc. And that's when I explained what happened, the threat to fire me, and showed the owner the changes to the final copy, initialed by Ron. Now the boss was going to give Ron a second chance, until the bill came in from the printer. They had to stamp 50,000 catalogs by hand. We had to rent their permit, since that's what was going on their stamp. Rental and labor was almost $8,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's $20,000. Plus, our early summer sales boost was off by almost $50,000 from the previous years. Adjusted for inflation, that's $200,000. So Ron was fired and I was left alone after that. Guys, Ron was digging his own grave and he didn't even see it coming. Like, it's so funny how some people don't realize that when someone says, "Hey, can I have that in writing?" it's basically code for "you effed up and I'm keeping you accountable for it." But for some people, it just goes right over their head. And that was quite the expensive mistake, Ron. Okay, so I was just a customer, but hot damn. I had a hotel room booked for 2 nights from a 5-star well-known hotel chain that rhymes with Holiday Fin. The room was the smallest and cheapest, with 2 double beds, probably even located below the parking garage. That was the only room available, so it would have to do. About a month later, I arrive with my buddy to basically drop our stuff off in the room so we can take off right away while the sun is still up. In the lobby, there was about a 200-person group shouting all at once at the 2 ladies manning the desk. After making plans for a few minutes to store our stuff elsewhere, the desk attendant notices us. Now, as we're clearly not part of the group, she waves us over past the large group and starts to handle our check-in. She politely asked us to fill the traveler forms while she's looking at my reservation. I thank her and try to make pleasant conversation about this and that, complimenting their uniforms and the hotel. I was trying to improve the sour atmosphere that the angry mob's been generating all around. So while we're filling the forms, an angry man next to us, who was apparently the leader of the lobby mob, keeps shouting, "I demand you arrange us extra rooms with 2 double-sized beds. We had a late addition to our travel, and they need a room with 2 double-sized beds right effing now." Apparently, the arguing's been taking place for quite a while already. She tries to get a word in, but she gets interrupted and the guy says, "I don't care if your stupid hotel is full. It's your job to give us a place to sleep, you stupid idiot. Get us another room and double-sized beds, and don't try anything else. I'm not interested in anything else, you idiot. I wonder how you can even keep your job. You can't even arrange a room for us." Every time the main desk attendant tries to talk to the angry man, he rudely interrupts her with some more shouting. The only thing I can do is to keep smiling at the ladies sympathetically. She then says, "We don't have double-sized beds available, but we do have..." The guy interrupts her again and says, "I don't want to hear it. Just do your job and press the damn buttons to make it happen. You must be mentally slow, aren't you? 2 double beds, or is that too difficult for you?" The clerks share a tired look with each other, but suddenly they both have this lamp lighting above their heads. They converse for a moment while pointing to their screens and then proceeds to tell me, "Our apologies, sir, but unfortunately, we don't have your room with the 2 double beds available which you booked for. As you can see, we're a bit full today," while gesturing to the mob in the lobby. So hearing that, my heart sinks a bit until she continues on and says, "So because we're fully booked, the only room we can offer you is the executive suite at the 24th floor, obviously for no extra cost. Unfortunately, it doesn't have 2 double-sized beds." She then takes eye contact with the angry man and she continues on and says, "But it does have 4 king-size beds, each in their own en-suites." Hearing that, the man drops dead silent and he's just staring at us. His mouth moves like a little mouth of a fish who's stranded on dry land. While looking at me again, she continues on and says, "I hope you can accept the free room upgrade, with most of our sincere apologies on behalf of the hotel management." And of course, all the room service is free, including the refreshments available in the suite kitchen and the suite bar areas. And all hotel VIP facilities are in your disposal 24/7. Please do enjoy your stay, and let us know if there's anything else we can do to make your stay more comfortable. She then dings a small bell, and at that, our bags get taken, while she gestures towards the fancy separate elevator at the side. At this point, I'm so shocked, I can only mutter a little bit of thanks and follow the person. While we're making our way towards the elevator, the main desk is explaining to the angry man, "Sir, I'm happy to inform you that we're able to make arrangements to have a single room with 2 double-sized beds available to accommodate your extra guests. That'll be 199 euros added to your bill." The man then snaps out of his trance-like state and continues shouting and says, "What the F? I don't want some single room with double-sized beds. I want a free executive suite too. Why the F do those effers get that effing king suite? And I get some crappy single room. That is unacceptable. Why did you give my better room to those 2 effing idiots instead of to me?" The woman now has a much more commanding tone and she replies, Unfortunately, sir, our free executive suite is not available. It's booked now. I tried to offer you a king size, but you were having none of it, so will you take the single room or not? Now, I can't tell accurately what was said next, but I'm quite sure there's a lot of cursing and throwing more insults from the man, and all I have is a smile while the bellhop closes the elevator doors, taking us up. Maybe half an hour later, when we head out to check the city, the lobby's been cleared. We go to the desk and thank the 2 attendants and give them both a good tip that we easily save with the free room service over the expensive hotel restaurant. Unfortunately, our schedule doesn't allow us to enjoy the free hotel VIP service as much, but the ladies definitely earned a bit of extra. It was a great experience for us, and I still remember this clearly even after a long time. And that front desk girl, she was truly maliciously compliant with that angry man. What a freaking idiot. Guys, I hate when customers scream at people and don't let them get a word in, right? Like, if he shut his damn mouth, he probably would have had the executive suite like she was trying to tell him. And I love how OP and his friend were upgraded in front of that man's face. So satisfying, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /MaliciousCompliance. Guys, if you enjoyed today's stories, hit that thumbs up, hit subscribe if you haven't, and if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. It's an r/I-don't-work-here-lady, where a customer demands OP serve him, and then gets his car ruined. It's such a satisfying story, so guys, if you haven't heard it, go check it out, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.